Het-Heru Nefer, Het-Heru. This is Kasankma Keparu with another broadcast for you. And today I have something really interesting to talk about, which is going to be about the secret to the law of attraction and the matrix. So I want you to sit tight. I'm going to get into some really deep stuff about this. And basically my goal is not to offend anybody with this, but I'm going to be talking about some very deep subject matter that's going to touch a lot of things, such as race, background, genetics, legacy, and things of that nature. So just keep in mind that what I'm going to be revealing here is not to really put, like point fingers at anybody or demean or degrade any one person or groups, but more or less to reveal the truth about what's going on in our existence and how we can better succeed by using the law of attraction and the matrix to our benefit, because there are individuals out there and institutions out there that are working this to our detriment. Okay, so just give me a little bit of time. I want to just adjust my mic so you guys can hear me better. Okay, great. So first start off, if you like my videos, could you like this video? Hit the like button, subscribe to my channel if it's the first time you're tuning in, and share it with friends and family members. And don't forget, we have some links at the bottom of the description box, which will take you to my website, the Osiris Report. And if you're interested in getting a reading done, you can sign up for one in the link below. So let's get into this and let's talk about some real deep stuff. Now, one of the things that when I was studying, when I was in college, and then after I left college, I really wanted to understand like how life worked beyond the physical, beyond the five senses, because I knew there had to be something going on. And the reason why this became suspect was the fact that I looked at things from a global perspective. I looked at other countries and saw how there was a lot of poverty, how there's a lot of corruption in third world countries, and even corruption in this country. And I kind of was just curious as to how did all this come about. And to me, none of it made sense. You know, you couldn't explain it in a very left brain concrete way. So I started looking at the metaphysical aspect of things, and there is only then and there did I find an answer, a possible answer. And then, of course, it wasn't the Gestalt answer or theory. It was just one piece in a puzzle. And I kept looking at it. And the more I looked, the more I discovered things. And then I started putting more pieces together to form that whole picture. And then things started to make more sense to me. Whereas you'll find others who are caught up in this matrix, they take what they're given as fact and they go through their daily lives and they just accept it, whereas I didn't. Now, I'm going to explain a little bit about why some individuals question the matrix, while other individuals go along with it, because that's very important. And I might even reference the film The Matrix, because I think there's a lot of jewels in there that you can refer to and use for our own benefit. But what I want you to understand is that the main takeaway from this video I want you to get is that, yes, there is something like the law of attraction and we're all living in a matrix, but I want to show you a way to use that to gain advantage, because right now it's being used to your detriment by a very exclusive group. And again, I will give you some insight as to how this is being done. And to that, let me just tell you this little short story about, I was on vacation with a friend of mine, and he is a really nice guy. And we were standing there and we were waiting for my other friend, George, and George gets drunk a lot. He's a funny guy when he's drunk, but you have to watch him so he doesn't go too crazy. But he's a really nice guy, really nice guy. And George was sitting there, we were looking for George, and turns out he was there talking with these two girls. And my friend Sam was saying that, he says, you see that girl that George is talking to, that's really like my type. And I noticed he did have a type. There was a certain type of woman that he liked. Well, long story short, I went to get George and ended up started talking to the two girls. And then we decided to go hang out. We left Sam. I don't know what happened with Sam. And the other girl that Sam, I think, was really attracted to, her and I ended up developing a relationship, and it was really good. But something always perplexed me about the relationship, you know, and it was this. I was like, well, you know, it seems that Sam was attracted to you, and I have a certain attraction to you, but it's something that's deeper and beyond. So it was only years later that I discovered that there is actually a certain name or a type of a categorized attraction for this type of woman, and it's called nyatni. All right, and this is women with certain nyatnis traits, and it could be men could have this as well. But what that term means is basically it's a woman who has the traits of a young girl, and she's not and a lot of men find that kind of attractive. Not that she's a young girl, we're not getting into pedophilia here and all that, but she still retains her youthful look. Now, why is that important? Why is it interesting? Okay, because I always question things. I'm like, okay, what's the attraction here? Because it's going deeper than what I can understand. And she wasn't the traditional. She didn't have that look, archetype look, where you'll see that mainstream media promotes, typically with white Western women. You know, that's really a lot of what they promote globally on a global level. So her look was a little, it departed from that, but still she was very attractive. So I come to understand that this was coined as a trait, a nyatnis, you know, it's nyatnis trait. So, but it takes a step further, and it gets into the metaphysical, meaning that we are programmed to love little children. We're programmed to love youthful features. And there's a reason for that, because we have to mate with individuals who are healthy and very youthful. Now, where does this program come from? Well, this program is something that's really deeply embedded in the psyche or the ether, or whatever you want to call it, that creates that type of attraction and pushes us in that direction. And in some ways, it's the same way where women will find a male attractive who has wealth and power. Now, we can argue this is a biological trait, or this is more, there's something that exists as a program within the matrix, okay? Now, I'm going to take this a step further. So her and I had this really great relationship, but I'm wondering, well, what is the basis of the relationship? Because it has to be that of a spiritual nature for me, right? I wanted to know that. And I'm thinking to myself, is this attraction something that's just a superficial attraction, or is it deeper? So she, you know, as things went on, she came to me and she said, you know, hey, are we ever going to get married? I said, yeah, as soon as you propose to me, you know, so that's how it's got to work. Anyway, so here's the deal. Now, you have a lot of people out there who are promoting the law of attraction, which basically says that if you focus on something, it expands. If you focus on something, you draw it to you. And that's to a degree true. It's true. Now, but there's a caveat to that. There's something very important that you have to understand if you're going to be a master magician or work this to your advantage. You have a number of things which will prevent the law of attraction from working. And the main thing that will prevent it from working is the matrix. And let me explain a little bit about how this matrix works and what you need to do. But first, let me just greet everyone that's coming into the chat room. So Princess Fiona, Het-Heru, Siwan, Het-Heru, Takia Jet, Het-Heru. Glad to see all of you have made it. Now, here's the deal, all right? So life is more about the metaphysical, and we have to understand it because we're brought up in a left brain world that's teaching us that the only thing that is real is what you can see, hear, feel, and taste, and that's wrong. And we have to get out of that sense. We have to get out of being polarized in that left brain thinking, because it's destroying the planet. We can argue about the minutiae, about the details of things. We can say, well, what's destroying the planet? Well, you can say it's famine, pollution, racism, sexism, but those things are merely the effect of something that is unseen, all right? And when you just start looking at the effects and you try to deal with them at an individual level, you're essentially fighting a hydra. You cut off one head and it grows another head. And you're not going to win that way. You've got to get to the the core essence of what this is about and what's basically spawning all of these things. And when you do that, then you can make a real change in the world. All right, so that's very important. And I just want to read something really quickly that gives you an idea of where this is coming from and what we have to do. And this is I don't promote this individual, so I mean, I didn't say his name or his book, but he's right on point with just this one issue. But there are a lot of other things I think he's way off point. And he says, out of mind. I began very early in this book talking about the difference between mind and consciousness. And the theme has been with us throughout. This is especially important as we consider what can be done about the current human experience. Albert Einstein said, you cannot solve problems with the same level of consciousness that created them. He was so right, and yet that's what we do. We use mind to respond to the problems caused by the mind. Plato said, when the mind is thinking, it is talking to itself. We have to go beyond mind and into consciousness, where we can feel the answers and know what we each can do and must do if we want this nightmare to end. We need to access levels of awareness that can perceive beyond the illusionary, holographic play-out realm of dense form. It is not that we have to go anywhere to make this connection. It is already part of us, at one with us. We need to remove the mental, emotional, vibrational barriers that prevent us from hearing and feeling those expanded levels of our awareness. Those barriers are mind, in a closed circuit, loopy state, and they hold us in the five sense perception where we are isolated from consciousness. The manipulators clump of virgin clay to make of whatever they want by programming the blueprint in the metaphysical universe. Mind, especially left brain mind, deals in structure, hierarchy, and rigid belief. These are body/mind realities, and they must cease to dictate human perception of the self and the world. This is how we got into this state, and it is certainly not going to get us out of it. You cannot solve problems with the same level of consciousness that created them. Rigid belief has to go for a start. Rigid belief has to go for a start. Religious belief, political belief, racial belief, cultural belief, self-identity belief. We are being asked to transform our entire sense of reality from the small to the all. I'll just leave it at that, all right? So basically, he has been talking about what I've been saying for a long time. And it is this left brain concrete experience that has caused a lot of problems. Now, those who rule the planet and understand this work through the matrix. Now, whenever you have a collective of people, you have what we call as a mass consensus agreement, and this is based on the Japanese mesquite monkey, the 100 monkey syndrome. So when people collectively come together and they have a consensus of thought, that thought is transferred into a type of entity, or what the occult practitioners call an ergomorph. This is an intelligent entity that then goes to work, whether on your behalf or not. And whether you are aware of it or not, it goes to work to manifest and to do things according to what the mass collective group has been thinking about. Now, when you spawn someone like a Hitler, he can only come about through the type of thinking that exists in the masses, because that inevitably creates that want and desire for someone like a Hitler. Do you understand what I'm saying? So when we look at things like, let's go back to the law of attraction. So you say you want to attract something, you want something, right? But then you must understand that if you are within an environment with a group of people who are diametrically opposed to the thing you want, then that's going to create some type of pushback for you to attract what you want, because you have an energetic matrix system that exists based on a program from the mass collective agreement, the masses of us. So if the masses of us want world peace, like the 100 monkey principle, then it's going to create this intelligent entity that will go to work on our behalf to create the world peace. And it will go to work by influencing people to do certain things, or influencing situations that will be in alignment with that desire. Now, here's what I'm saying. I'm going to take this deeper, all right? And I want to say, again, I'm not here to insult anybody or point fingers, but the masses of us have already been programmed by this matrix to do certain things that are really diametrically opposed to our own wants and desires. And when individuals start questioning the matrix, when they become a neo and say, I want to get out of this programming, then they are going to be opposed by the matrix. So their good intentions and who they are will be met with opposition. Because this is a way of the intelligent entity or the system sending the men in black after them. Do you understand? So the matrix or the system sees you who are trying to do good and elevate your spirit as a virus, and it's seeking to get rid of you. All right. So you'll find this, for example, if you go into a corporate America, they'll talk about, well, we have a certain culture. That's the intelligent energy from the masses of people who work at that corporation. And you'll find that the corporation has a sigil or a symbol which calls forth that entity. And you'll see this within a lot of TV stations. Their sigil or their icon is the eye, the all-seeing eye, or it could be something else. This is why if you look at movies, production companies have a sigil or a symbol, and that calls the energy. Now, this energy, because we're not priests and priestesses or really educated magi, we will harbor thoughts and beliefs that create entities that are opposing what we want in life. This is why when people try to work the law of attraction, it doesn't work. And it really should work. Do you understand what I'm saying? So understand that if you want to become a neo, or if you want to set out to draw things to you, such as, like a good, happy life, a good husband, a good wife, a good life, that the system itself is set up to oppose you. And that you're going to have to do certain things to protect who you are, because it will send out its agents to deal with you. This is why you may find a lot of obstructions or people who you say are just messed up and evil that will come directly against you, because the system creates the energy or the entity that monitors what's going on and makes sure that everyone's in alignment with what the masses want. Do you understand what I'm saying? So this is how you'll get a lot of people in a come to church on Sunday, pray, and really believe that the Bible is a history book, and go out there and proselytize and bring more people into the fold. That is the energy from the mass collective working on their behalf to spread the word and to program, manipulate, and control others and bring them into the fold. Does that make sense? And it does this also through a process of reward. So it'll bring others into the fold and give them some luck to make it seem like, well, you see, our way is the real way because you came into our church and you believed in our Savior, and therefore you were blessed with an extra $1,000, And so they'll attribute this to a miracle or the blessings of their religion, not realizing that it's really an entity that was created by the masses, their thought process, vibrational frequency, and that this intelligent energy is working on that group's behalf. Here's another one, and let me break this down to you. When you have something that has existed for a long time, like racism, it is, and I've said this, and if you read the papers that I've written and the books and stuff, you'll understand that I said this exists as a virus. It exists as an entity. It is not just something that scientists have gotten and categorized as a term that you can quantify, like neoteny. Yes, neoteny is a term, but neoteny exists as an imprint or blueprint or an energy. Racism now is intelligent energy. Do you understand that? And it's going to be influencing and infecting people to do things and to think a certain way, which is trapped in third dimensional thinking. This is why the masses of people on the planet who are of European or white background are very, very stuck in left brain thinking. They can't get out of it because the entity, the energy that they have created is keeping them polarized in 5 perception reality. They just can't get out of it. When you look at the planet in totality and you see that most people of color, no matter where you go with the Australian Aborigines, the Native Americans, the Africans, are living in Brazil, the Indian culture, from Indus Kush, they all are living in abject poverty, but from a left brain, scientific, ignorant perspective that many of these scholars from these prestigious universities will say is that, well, these indigenous people are inferior because we as white people, you know, we are very technologically advanced due to our thinking and we have excelled in the world. It's no. What they have done is they've created an entity, and this entity is going out and it's thwarting any plans that these individuals have to uplift themselves, to better themselves. I want you to understand that, because this entity is very vicious. And the one thing that it has as this prime directive is survival, is self-preservation. So it is not going anywhere without a fight. We as magicians and magi's know about this because we create entities, we create spirits, and we send them out on missions. So the masses of people who think in a certain way, which is predominantly left-brain racist or sexist, will create an entity that will go and further their agenda. And they don't have to be complicit in this. They don't have to understand that they're doing this, but it's happening regardless of whether they're aware of it or not. They're contributing to it by giving it energy, feeding it energy. Now, this is what they have coined as the 100 monkey principle, because when an idea or concept reaches a certain level, it infects people of that gender, that race, that group to act in accordance with that idea. Ideas have power. Do you understand what I'm saying? So we have to be careful, and this is why in ancient Kemet, Egypt, they had Nekabet and Wajet. So Wajet protected the front of Egypt and Nekabet protected the back of Egypt. And these were psychic defenses to ward off those energies that would try and infect their society, which could bring it to downfall. This is why it's important that you protect the way you think and the way you act. Because if you are psychically open, then you will be infected by the mass collective agreement. Does that make sense? Now let's take this further, because I want you to understand how we can now really flip the script and use this to our advantage. But there's something I want to talk about. This is from the same author in another one of his books, where he talks about the wise monkeys. In the years since that mound in Peru, I have seen the awakening of the human heart gathering in both numbers and power. The transformation I was told about in the 1990s is coming to pass, even as the forces of control also appear to be increasing their power. But this is, in fact, the final card of a gambler who forgot the golden rule. Don't play with those who know more than you do. The Illuminati plays oneness. 4 threes plays a full house. The awakening is challenging your domination of the Illuminati reality in the collective unconscious, the collective consensus reality. The 100 monkeys are posting their realization on the human World Wide Web, and there they can be accessed by anyone attuning to that awareness. This is happening at an ever-quickening pace. It can be seen in the millions on the streets and protests at the invasion of Iraq, many of whom have never done anything like that before. It can be seen in their articulated understanding that those in authority are peddling lies to sell a secret agenda to the people. It can be seen in the empathy with those of other skins and other cultures who face the violence of the so-called civilized world. The 100 monkey syndrome means that people are spontaneously awakening with a knowing that something is seriously not right with the direction they are being taken in. Now, the good thing about that is what it's saying is that now The 100 monkey principle is not a negative thing. It's there to work for your benefit, but the ruling elite, the oligarchy, are now using it for your detriment. They know about it. So the World Wide Web and things of that nature are now passing on information and tying people together so that people now have an awakening and understanding of what's going on and who's controlling the planet. And when that happens, it changes the nature of the entity. It will either change the nature of the entity, or it will inject a new virus or a new entity that will work on your or their behalf. Does that make sense? So the idea of protesting is not needed. You don't have to need it, but what is needed is to collectively change the way we think. Because when you start doing that, the nature of the matrix changes. Let me say that again. If you change the nature of the way we think, the nature of the matrix will change. This is why I say it is not important that you get out of the matrix, because that is it's a lofty goal, but a very difficult challenge. What is more important is that you learn the secret techniques of manipulating the matrix, of understanding how the law of attraction really works. It works, but you first got to deal with the entity that these people have created to hold you back. Now, let's get down to the brass tacks. Let's get down to the real core of this, all right? You, as an individual, belong to a group, and there's nothing you can do about that. So let me explain. The law of Ma'at means that there's an interdependence and interrelationship between all things. If I am Asian, for example, right, and my Asian people are doing things that is wrong, and my ideas are just and correct, it doesn't matter, because the wrong that they are doing, when the punishment is served, is going to be upon me as well, because we are connected in that way. Do you understand? Now I can say, well, you know what? I never participated in what they were doing. I didn't do that. Understandably, yes, you're right. You didn't do that. You had very good ideas or motives, but that doesn't disconnect you from the group as a whole. You understand what I'm saying? So you have to be careful and be aware of that fact, that you belong to a lineage, a legacy of gender and of race, or of a group, a collective group. And that you have to be mindful that what one does affects the other. Regardless of your intentions of being a very holy, mystical, righteous person, that's good. But you also have to be aware of the thing that they're doing has created this entity that will now create problems in the world, and it will be visited upon you if you don't take action to do something. So what does that mean? So let's look at it this way, and I'm going to be brutally honest with some people. All right, you have to understand that in the world today, they have manipulated the matrix to create certain entities to mess with people. In particular, they target the disenfranchised, the poor. So one of the first attacks that they have done has been against African American women. They have created entities to infect their mind, to have them to be very combatant against their own men. And another thing they have done is they have created entities that have affected white women to make them unhappy with their lot in life, to oppose white men, to create this friction, so that it creates more of a division. See, the ruling elite can only succeed when they create factions, when they create these divisions and cells within the country, because they cannot control the masses of the population who have a consensus of thought, because that will create a very powerful entity or orgamor to work on their behalf. So they have to splinter and divide and conquer in that way, but at the same time, creating an entity that will work in the psyche and the minds of certain racial groups and genders. This is why you'll find that, for example, if you look at the Australian Aborigines who were trying to get out of their situation, they were trying not to be exterminated in essence and put on reservations. But the entity and spirit, or the ergomore that was created, was so powerful that it worked on the behalf of those white colonizers to subjugate those Aborigines. And we see this as a consensus theme on the planet. So when you look at the idea, and this is something that I studied very intensely, when you look at the idea of history and you say that the masses of the population on this planet are people of hue or melanin complexion, and the minority of people are people who lack melanin. But how could the few control the many? Now, from a military might perspective, it still doesn't make sense. But from a metaphysical juju perspective, it makes total sense. For example, you can use the same thing. Instead of talking about race, you can say, how does the 1%, the small elite 1%, control the 99% of the population on the planet? Well, the only way that can happen is through the metaphysical realm, through the dark arts, which is why they are masters of it. So we have to start looking at how to use that in our favor and how to flip the script and turn this around. And the way that the 1% is able to manipulate the 99% is simply to do the rituals, to create the entity that can go to work on their behalf. And it works through a type of proxy. So they sit back and relax and watch the entity work to cement things like racism and sexism in place on the planet. And they know fully well that this entity has the prime directive, which is self-preservation. So it's not going anywhere. And that your attempts to get rid of it, or more importantly, to better your individual situation, will be met with failure. And it's not through your own accord. It's not through you. If you look at yourself and you go, I'm a failure, I can't get out of my lot in life, it is not your fault. It is not your fault, because you belong to a group, a gender, you belong to a race that is fighting a metaphysical entity that is directly opposing your right to exist. And let me make that plain and clear. You're not fighting for something that's taking away your civil rights. That's bullshit. You're fighting for life. This entity wants to exterminate you. That is its goal. And the 1% know this. And they know if they program the entity to try and exterminate you as quickly and as expedient as possible, you will quickly wake up to what is going on. So they have programmed the entity not to do that, but to do it over the course of several millennium or years or whatever. They're saying time is not that important, but what is important is, as you progress through the decades, do things to eliminate their population, to eliminate them. So that it's like, all right, there's an analogy. If you take I saw this actually on Facebook, it was hilarious as shit. But anyway, there was a crab. I guess these Japanese or Chinese people were cooking a shrimp or crab dinner, and it was boiling water, and you saw all the other like shrimp inside, and they were basically dead and boiling. But there was one shrimp that was hanging on to the pot, and he wasn't going in. He was hanging on for dear life, and it was the funniest thing. But you ever heard the analogy of you put a frog in water, and you slowly turn up the temperature? Well, it goes from cold to warm, and the frog thinks he's in a jacuzzi. Oh, it's warm, this is nice. And then it gets hotter and hotter until people are having frog legs for dinner. That's what you're involved with. The heat is slowly being turned up on you, and you don't realize what's going on. You think, oh, they're just trying to take away my rights. Let me protest. And it's getting hotter and hotter. And then one day you're going to realize the damn water is boiling and you're dying. This is what we've got to wake up to. It's not about rights. It's not about privileges. It's about life and death. That's what it's about. through a metaphysical entity that's working out there to destroy you. Now, I am especially sympathetic when it comes to the children, because one of the things that you have to do when raising the next generation is to have them understand that if they encounter failure, that it's okay, that they're not to internalize it and make it seem like there's something wrong with them. See, I grew up in a generation where I went to school and a university where if you didn't excel and do something right, it was your fault. On a personal level, it was your fault. This is why we see things like the bell curve and these idiot scholars who call themselves scholars who want to try and prove that people of melanin complexion or people who are Black, Hispanic, are less intelligent than white people, which is total ridiculous, stupid argument. But they do that to create the entity, the energy, the intelligent energy, to basically come against your endeavors to exceed and excel. You're fighting an uphill battle. And then I see things that they put out in mainstream media, such as this young African-American male who basically got admitted to 20 universities. His application was accepted to 20 universities, and they're saying, oh, he's a genius, and look what he did, he's brilliant. So what he is a neo. He's learned to hack the matrix. But what he did is not readily and easily duplicatable by the masses, because there's only a few of us who are going to realize what the matrix is doing and to be able to come out of that and to work our own individual juju against it. This is not for everyone, because the battle that that young man fought to get to where he is must have been arduous. And if you want to take up that journey, well, you better be ready to come against your own people, your own gender, who are agents of the matrix, who are going to oppose you in every way, shape, and form. And they're not going to do it because they're evil or they're mean, because they're unconscious. They're programmed to do it. They don't realize what they're doing. It may be your mother, your father, your sister, your brother, who you love, but they are programmed to do it, to keep you in check. This is why when you look at the African-American community, they always talk about the Uncle Toms, the Coons. I said, well, these are people who are programmed. They're doing what the matrix wants them to do. Don't fault them, because the fundamental principle of who you are is consciousness, is God, man, God, woman. And under normal circumstances, in a normal world, they would not be betraying their own people and their own race. They wouldn't. In the Holocaust, there were some Jews who pretended to be Nazis and part of the Third Reich. You have to understand that, yes, what they did was wrong, but they were faced with the penalty of death for being Jewish. So they're not, what they're going to do is, for, in a way, self-preservation or being programmed to the matrix. And some of that has to be with individuals who want to be seen as equal and not less than. And we all want that. You can't blame people for wanting that. Now, the means and method they go about it may be wrong. So you have to have a deeper understanding of what's going on. And this is where I get back to what I was talking about by Bill Cosby, being the all-seeing eye, the observer in the world, but not casting judgment or an emotional attachment to something, because the minute you become emotionally invested in something, it creates the spirit entity or the mass collective agreement. If you withdraw from that connection, then you don't feed the ergomor, the entity. You don't feed it. Because when you feed that entity, whether you say, well, I believe O.J. Simpson did it or he didn't, or I believe Bill Cosby did it or he didn't, then you are setting things up for a grand combat, a grand war of he said, she said, or Democrat versus Republican. You have to understand that one of the core principles of integrated brain thinking is the ability to live with two opposing ideas and see them as integral parts of the whole and not diametrically opposed to one another. These left brain nitwits, all they see is that I'm right, you're wrong, you are my enemy, you oppose me, and therefore we must go to battle. So does that make sense? Does everybody feel me there? You know? All right. So I want you to understand, and I want you to teach your kids that their individual success hinges upon the collective success. Let me say that again. Their individual success in life hinges upon the collective success. That's a Ma'at principle, interdependence and interrelationship between all things in the world. And Ma'at, there's an aspect of Ma'at that tells you that Ma'at lays the law. And if you violate that law, Ma'at sends Harukahuti to cut your head off, to go to battle. Because God put in place a mechanism to defend righteousness. So those individuals who call themselves the ruling elite, the Illuminati, or whatever they want to call themselves, are violating God's law, and there will be a reckoning. But in the interim, we cannot sit back and allow and think, well, you know, God will deal with them in God's time. No, don't depend on that. Do you know why? Because you are God. And you have to take action to right the wrong. But if you sit back and wait for God to work, what does that say on a very NLP, neuro-linguistic programming level? That says to you that your belief lies in a power that's outside of you and that you believe that you are powerless. So what you're doing is you're disempowering yourself. But if you understand that you are God and you have power, then you understand that you can right the wrong that's happening in our society and in our world at large today. And that the way you do that is not to be taking up military arms, it's not to be protesting, but it's to work within your immediate set, your immediate group, to change the mindset, to change the ideas that they harbor, so that you can deal with this entity that's out there that's causing havoc. You can program an entity. It's very simple to do. You just get a collective group of people. Let's say you get 5 people together and you all sit there and you do a deep meditation state where you all agree upon a certain objective and watch how that objective will come into being if the group is consistent and does it on a consistent basis, like on every Saturday, every Sunday. And if you do that, you'll slowly but surely see the objective come to fruition because you are creating an entity that's going to work on your behalf to do it. So let us tune into these powers. Let us stop saying we're powerless against what's going on in the world. Because the minute you realize that you're in the matrix and there's nothing you can do, is the moment you're dead, essentially. You're a walking dead. You're a zombie. But if you realize that you have power and you can change things, and you become God on earth. And you should aspire to be that way. Now, here's what's important. This will help you go a long way. It's very difficult to trick the subconscious mind. And the entity works through the subconscious mind, meaning it's going to get you to do things you're not even aware of. It's going to get you to think things you're not even aware that are not really your thoughts. So how do you do this? How do you counteract it on an individual level? Well, the first way is that you have to have an archetype, an iconography, an icon that you can look to and aspire to be like. No, it's not what is his name? Cardi B, and it's not Biggie Smalls, and not Tupac, because they are put out by the mainstream media to divert you from what you should be looking to aspire to be. And that is Oser. That is God. See, To succeed, you have to have a model. It's called modeling in NLP. You have to have a model to emulate. Because when the subconscious mind sees that, it now has something tangible to work toward. It's just like it's just like going into a meditative state and saying, well, I'm going to meditate on an objective. Well, what is the objective? I don't know. I can't visualize it. Well, if you can't visualize it, how do you expect the subconscious mind to manifest it? So if you can visualize yourself sitting in a room full of money, that's a good visualization. So in order for you to enact your power and to succeed in life, you have to visualize the perfect archetype or the model. Now, it doesn't have to be El-Ser. If you want to visualize Bill Gates, by all means, go ahead. If you want to visualize Oprah Winfrey, by all means, go ahead. But make sure the person or the model you're emulating has the qualities and characters that you want and that have some altruistic concerns. You don't want to use them as a model someone who possesses a lot of human frailties. That could be a problem. This is why you'll see that a lot in religious institutions, the model that they have are pictures of Jesus or pictures of Buddha, or Lao Tse, okay, or Krishna, because those images are powerful sigils that will get you to act in accordance with their principles. All right? So that's the first thing you have to do. Well, you know what? I'm going to answer your question. You said Cardi B is cute, but very far from being a role model. Individuals like, what is it, Nicki Minaj and Cardi B are selected by the occult music industry. And they're selected to be archetypes so that they get you to follow them and they get you to think in a certain way. Basically, they're used as instruments to program you. And it was a fascinating documentary or special that MTV did 10 years ago. And I was kind of impressed by it because MTV talked about how these archetypes or these pop cult figures are used to influence and program you. And I was surprised that MTV told on itself. It was doing this type of programming to let you know what they were doing. They really exposed themselves and others in the music industry. But that's how it's done. This is why, like Beyonce, all of these people are used in a way as these figureheads, as these icons to get you to act and think in accordance with the way the mass corporate conglomerate wants you to think. This is why you must not fall victim or susceptible to that. You got to move away from that and start having models in your mind. The model can even be you, the perfect you in the future, where you're wealthy, you're happy, and sexually content or whatever. Whatever it is that you're looking for, you can use your own self as the model of someone in the future. A lot of times I do astral projection or whatever, lucid dreaming you want to call it, where I'll visit myself in an alternate universe where I find myself either very happy, content, or very wise or very wealthy, and I'll seek counsel from that aspect of myself. Because I'm through with the matrix. I understand what it's about. And I'm saying to myself, you know what? I can help awaken people, but I'm not going to fight that entity on my own because it's too powerful. And you can see what it's doing to Bill Cosby. You can see what it's done to other important. Look at Nikola Tesla. This man came along and wanted to revolutionize the world by bringing to the world right brain scientific inventions. And who was he opposed by? Thomas Edison. Many people of the time opposed him so that he couldn't bring his knowledge to the world of free energy. And at the end, he died poor in a hotel in Manhattan. So you're fighting a difficult battle, but it is winnable. Just take it in chunks and in pieces. And understand it starts first by your perception of yourself. Because if you are brought up in an environment with parents who instill with you a low self-esteem, that creates an entity. Now you're fighting your own ergomore, because you will not succeed because you will be opposing yourself. You will have created an entity that is of low self-esteem and low self-worth that will bring to you situations that will not allow you to progress in life. And this is why other people are like, oh, I accept my lot in life. I'm unlucky. I just can't get a good job. I just can't make things work. My ship will never come in. That is because, to no fault of their own, they were brought up with parents who didn't encourage them, didn't give them positive affirmations, didn't awaken them to the true knowledge of themselves. So now they're faced with a legacy now they're dealing with through this energy that is just going to wreak havoc in their life. You ever met a very cocky person, and this person just says, you know, like, he's always cocky and he thinks everything goes his way or her way. And you look in their life, and a lot of times it does. They seem to just get things. Not because they're the most talented, but because that belief system that they have creates that energy or that intelligence that then goes out there and works on their behalf to bring them so-called good luck or so-called opportunities. The masses of white people on the planet get by not through their own individual merits, but because there's an entity working to help them through the collective. That entity will afford them opportunities with jobs, with investments, with stardom in Hollywood, with technical knowledge in Silicon Valley. That entity will reward these white people and push them to that level. And the entity, the same entity, will now remove opportunities from those people of color on the planet and will put up obstacles in their way if they try to succeed. This is why the 1%, the ruling elite, is winning, because we don't understand. And I was in the Bible, and some of you are more knowledgeable in the Bible, but I believe it was in the Bible where it says what is it? We fight not against flesh or physical, but of spirit. We fight against spirit. I don't know what chapter or verse that is, but that's what it talks about. And that is so true. We don't fight against the flesh. We don't fight against the physical. We fight against the metaphysical that's out there. And then when you have these individuals who are clever and they try to use the same thinking that created the problem to try and solve the problem, and you get nowhere. So stop using the left brain to try and figure out how to get out the matrix. It's not going to work, because the left brain created this matrix in the first place. Or this version of the matrix, I should say, because there are different versions, you know, because it's all subjective. Anyway, I hope all of this makes sense. I hope you internalize it. I hope it really brings home the understanding of why the world is the way it is and why your individual efforts to succeed sometimes don't work. And it's due no fault of your own, so don't blame yourself. Do not blame yourself because you are attached to a group, a race, a gender that is, your success is hinged upon their success. If you work for a corporation, as I said earlier, and you want to excel in that company, if the dominant culture is one of backstabbing, talking, gossiping, then that's an ergomore. That's an entity that's going to oppose your efforts to climb up the corporate ladder. So get out of that company. Move out of it quickly. When I was starting out in my occult practices, I got involved in many organizations that were just ass backwards. And I saw very early on, I said, well, there's a negative spirit here. I got to get out of here. And usually the ergomore or entity affects women first. Women are very susceptible to it because women are by nature right brain thinkers. So they're the first ones that are susceptible to this and the first ones who are attacked by the ruling elite. This is why you get black women who come on these TV shows and say, black men ain't no good. They ain't no good black men. They're all locked up. Saying no dumbass nonsense like that. And then you get white women who know fully well that the history of the country has been where certain aristocratic white men have gone overseas and enslaved third world countries or indigenous people, brought them here to build up this country. And then white women go, well, I'm not happy. I want power. I want more money. I want independence. So you're not happy that the fact that this white man has raped and pillaged and brought you the booty of war, and you still want more. But yet you're talking about feminism and independence, but you're not really willing to look at, and you're saying that you're wrong, that you've been done a great wrong because you're held back in corporate America, you're held back in the world because you're a woman, but you're not able to look at the wrong that your men have done in the world. You must first address that wrong and say, well, you shouldn't have really, gone out there and enslaved these people under the guise of they're inferior and that you're a Christian. Maybe you shouldn't have done that. And maybe I shouldn't be unhappy with the way things are because I am living in a very wealthy country. And I am, as under the Constitution and the rights in this country, protected, the most protected class there is. But still, that's not enough for me. So I just want to bring home an understanding of the reality of what we're dealing with, and we if we're able, if you want to move forward, and we as a people want to move forward and get out of this mass programming, we have to first realize and take a step back of the ills of society and what we have done wrong and what we have contributed to. And only by first taking that step, we will be able to change things for the better. I mean, a sick person cannot get medicine or get healing if they're not willing to admit that they're sick. And I'm telling you, the masses of people in this country are sociopaths. And I am not kidding you. I'm talking about the literal definition of being a sociopath. Lacking empathy, being very egotistical, out for self, and don't have a care in the world what happens to other people as long as they can enjoy a certain lifestyle. But for those individuals who are neos or magicians, you will not accept that and deal with that. You will say, I know what I have done to contribute to the wrong, and I'm willing to make amends. And I'm now starting on a journey to transform this planet because enough is enough. So with that, I want to bring this to a conclusion. And I don't want any of you, and let's be clear, to start going out there and blaming anyone. This is not meant for you to run out there and start blaming white men for this and that, or white women for this and that, or blaming black people for this and that, or black men for this and that. I have told you that people act in accordance with the programming of the Matrix. That in a normal society, the way our ancestors envisioned it, people would not be doing these things. So you have to look at people from the perspective that the true essence of who they are is consciousness. Because the minute you start to blame people and say, well, all white people are racist or all black people are violent and this, then you are going according to the mass collective agreement, according to what the Matrix wants. So you're just, again, participating in that and making the world worse. I want you to look at this from a real right brain perspective and say, you know what? I understand the core of what is happening, and I'm going to work toward mending and healing and not blame. Now, that doesn't mean that you don't call to task those who have done wrong. You must do that. That has to be done. But in the interim, work toward healing. And then Judgment Day will come when then we can enact righteous laws that can deal with the crimes of the past. All right. Let me just read this one comment. Oh, Het-Heru, you said many women are blended. I don't know what that means. And I think it can cause a spiritual opposition within, because their ancestors were raped into this society, and yes, blame and anger distorts further. Yes, that's correct. That is correct. It's again going back to what I was saying. It's not them per se, but it's an entity or energy that exists, that was created because the energy and entity gets spawned by really intense emotions. So those really intense emotions don't dissipate; they become an intelligent entity. And every entity that's created is of a different intelligence level. Some are very intelligent, some are just as intelligent as they need to be to fulfill a mission. For example, a cockroach is not very intelligent, but it doesn't need to be intelligent to fulfill its objective, which is to clean up the dirt and stuff that's there. Same thing with crabs at the bottom of the sea. They're scavengers. They don't need to be very intelligent to be scavengers. But we need to be intelligent to fulfill our mission in this fourth dimensional existence. Okay? So what I'm saying to you is, when these ergomores or entities are created, not all of them are created on the same intelligence level. Some are purely emotional based and evil and satanic in nature. Others are very high intelligences that are very benevolent and loving and caring. But those are few and far between, you know what I mean? And we need more of them, because they're willing to help us in our ascension to fifth dimension. All right? So there we go. So you guys, I want to thank you all, to the magicians and magis out there, God men and God women aspiring to be. And if you like this broadcast, please hit the like button, share this with friends and family, get this revolution started. Subscribe to my channel for more videos. And until my next broadcast, I want to thank you. This is Kasak Ma'at Keperu, son of Ma'at, Amen Ra.